Welcome everyone as we prepare to see what has been brought to bear today. The beginnings of a brand new series, and what better game to start us off than one that, pure and simple, came out of nowhere thanks to a developer over on Twitter announcing its release. The Dungeons of Dreadrock. Now, I always love to be surprised by a brand new game that honestly has no right being as good as it is. Coming from an indie developer and with an incredibly low price of entry being less than $5 Australian. As you can see from our opening screen, we are getting along a bit into Dungeon 33, and the game has been genuinely interesting so far, not only in terms of its storyline, played out fairly simply as you go along with some small cutscenes, as well as dialogue interactions with characters, alongside a curious meta dreaming mechanic, but it's kept my attention and kept me coming back to it, so it can't be all that bad. Also in the fact that each dungeon provides a brand new challenge. This is a puzzle game at the end of the day, and even when there have been ones that are fairly tricky, to be honest with you, none of it's been insurmountable, and more importantly, haven't actually needed to use a guide for any of this. Everything is fairly well signposted, and there is an option to provide hints, some of which will straight up tell you what to do, but there's a pretty decent chance you'll have figured it out before then. I say this because each dungeon is a rather small map, and there's only so much that can be done with each one. I will note though, as we start up as always with our options, that if you want to skip these, do check for the timestamps, but that being said, there are not many. Now, the lights option, I've tried it forced on, I've tried it off, and I've tried on auto, and I haven't actually noticed a huge difference for any of it. Whereas with our controls, simply this will put it onto the left-hand side of the screen or the right-hand side of the screen as we play. We can see our menu over on the left-hand side, we can move it over to the left or back onto the right. And yes, I realize that that actually indicates where it will move rather than where it is, which is why it kind of confused me. And our data privacy page simply providing us information as to how much information is being taken by Unity to keep an eye on the performance, with the main thing of note being the assistance of hints. Now, you can have hints completely turned off, you can have hints always on, or after 5 minutes. Now, getting to 33, there's only been 2 times that the hints have come up, although on one of them I'd actually figured out how to do it. I just simply took a while completing it, as I was rather enjoying one of the animations included for it, which we'll have a look at later. Well, with our very limited options done, with no ability to change resolution or screen size, that's really all our options count for. Outside of this, we can go into our save games to pick a save game we want, or delete them all if we really wish to, as well as go into our gamepad configurations. Now, there really aren't that many buttons to begin with, though unfortunately there's no form of rebinding keys. You're just going to have to move on a keyboard with WASD, alongside the spacebar allowing you to throw items that you pick up or place them as it may be, and finally your mouse in order to click the specific item you want to use. You do actually have the option to use a gamepad, however, may just be a problem I have, but I actually find the game worked a lot better on the keypad, as WASD were much easier to control the character since you're moving one square at a time, getting the right direction, and actually moving a little quicker than on a control pad where I often ended up walking into flames, but I'm sure that's more of just me paying poorly. You can hear right from the start, completely to my surprise, the sound quality is absolutely fantastic. Honestly, the game score is not only brilliant, but the sound effects used and also the full narrated voiceovers are really bloody good. And once more, from an indie game that's selling for less than $5, this is how you make a game cheap, affordable, easy point of entry, and while working with so little, absolutely incredible. And though there are certainly annoyances such as our mouse remaining on screen, it's not really enough to ruin the game experience in any way, shape or form, and more importantly, as I said, the game really does a lot while working with so little that it's genuinely impressive. Do be warned, as this is a puzzle game and the levels are fairly small, we're going to be seeing some spoilers, so if you want to go through yourself and really enjoy each of the missions, which I highly recommend you do, I'm unfortunately going to be saying do not watch this, as even though I'm going to be jumping the cuts around a bit to try and avoid any sort of solutions to the puzzles as we go, it kind of can't be helped in order to show off what the game does, and I'm definitely going to be including at least 1 or 2 full chapters in order to show exactly what the game is like. And finally, I will note there is some mature content in forms of dialogue, but let's go ahead and start up a level so we can actually see how this plays. And once more, something you'll notice as we're playing along, that our mouse is permanently on screen. even though we're not using it. So let's just flick that over to the side. And what's very impressive actually for this game is the fact that not only is so much interactable, as we can see here, going up and finding out what happens as we try to get a glimpse of the sewer cave behind the bars, we actually get to hear some fully voiced narration.
You try to get a glimpse of the sewer cave behind the bars, but it's filled with utter darkness.
The fact that we're getting this sort of thing in such a cheap indie title is honestly pretty darn amazing. The developer's done a great job while keeping the price low, giving a high quality to a nice and cheap game. So exactly how does it play? Well, you'll be using WASD to move around one square at a time, which is, yes, rather slow. It's an indie handcrafted puzzle game, one where each puzzle will draw upon a mixture of your own personal skill and ability to actually move your character, one that moves fairly slowly, simply one square at a time with each press of a button, and entirely unable to turn around without moving. Honestly, this is tank controls at their finest, and weirdly something I've kind of missed. And as you can see, timing is everything. Taking those last minute jumps and ditches, the fact that you move one square at a time, kind of making this almost feel like a rhythm game. Honestly, the amount of times where you will find yourself rhythmically hitting your buttons in order to avoid the enemy kind of reminds me of Crypt of the Necrodancer, actually, now I think about it. But you will engage in different parts of the environment in order to gain access to materials there may be, or even some shortcuts right here, grabbing a stone from that wall as well as there, going around, not finding anything else, but there we are, 3 stones. Don't mind if we do. Let's go ahead and chuck some of these stones down. I should say I've done this level a few too many times. Actually, I do need all of them. And now we're going to go back onto the next floor, because normally in this game, when you're moving into a door that you've already been down, you will actually not be able to go there. It will give you a message saying, you know, you can't go this way. But in a few of them, the floors will be connected. In this case, our 2 floors connected because we have some stones. We need to drop down these trapdoors. Actually, should have paid attention to what they were for a second there, but still. In order to drop them down to the next floor, set off the platforms for Sesame Chapter 49. You can see here we have 2 remaining here. We still need to put some stones or even our sword potentially onto. Something that will come later on in the game. Initially you are unable to throw it. You'll actually just be going around and attacking enemies in much the same manner as I'm walking into this wall. With there being a fairly nice little delay actually between the enemy arriving, seeing as you have to use melee. And because I've been at this for a little bit while recording, we can actually hit the question mark and get ourselves some hints. There's more than 1 stone hidden in this level. We had 1, 2, 3. There's 1 stone on the floor and 2 hidden in the walls. That's our 3 stones. You need to throw 4 things down. We need to use all 4 of them. Throw 3 stones and your sword into the next level. Now, unfortunately, we're actually going to have to restart. And the reason being is that we need to be over this side when we finish. Yeah, trying to talk and do a puzzle game is actually surprisingly difficult, I have to say. If we go ahead and grab these and let's set this up. First off, let's drop a stone over here. So we have our point to exit. That'll hold our platforms open. I mean, I did say there would be spoilers, and here they are. Oh, this one's really awkward. You can't turn around. Turn around. Turn around, darn you! I wish for you to drop something. That doesn't work. Oh, this is where it gets tricky. Let's drop that one first. That's an easy one to drop, and then we know we just have to get the bottom 2. There we go. Throw that there. Chuck the sword. Farewell stones. Right, we finally got it. I'm not the best at these, but it's absolutely fine because I thoroughly enjoyed every second of it. And after all, that is the true purpose of a game. You need to enjoy it. You don't need to be a genius. You don't even need to feel good about it. Just need to complete it. I'm gonna go say hello to this.
Hard to guess what's in there, but you're pretty sure it's
not a rat indeed. Right, ideally we need another stone. But to have these all open. Let's give these walls a little nudge. See if there's anything they feel like leaving us. Appears not though. What we might have to do is chuck all these back. In which case we have a sword. Curious. It will allow us to proceed. Oh, marvelous. With no sword into chapter 50. But I'll definitely note as we move along that the game will save every time you enter a new chapter, so do keep an eye, particularly when those missions do link together, as you may need to know which save to go back to if you start to mess things up. It's only actually been an issue once, and I don't actually think it might have been an issue. That may have just been me being an idiot. Haha! That's how you get your stone back. This game always has a plan for it. Yes, so there's all different enemies, and the enemies have that lovely little delay, just giving you the chance to move around, and as we've seen, actually integrated into the challenges themselves, being used to actually force them to attack each other. I just threw the dagger again, didn't I? Hot darn. But going back and redoing it. Oh, marvelous, we are back, ready to take on our zombie. Now all the enemies in this, barring some of the larger bosses, we'll see them as we go down in a single hit. Now of course so do we, so you are extremely at risk of everything in this game, really putting some pressure on you. And coming into our new level, we can now see that we are unable to go back, meaning our levels are not connected. We've completed all the prior, we don't need to return, we can keep moving forward. A nice little thing by the developer just to keep us on the straight and narrow. We can see over here, we do have a little campfire. Each of these campfires giving you a little bit of meta gaming as it does, saying this would be great for restoring your hit points if only you had any. But when you light them, you are able to actually learn more and more about the story as it's gone. With the dungeons of Dreadrock, the Mountain King being in charge, our elders have sent off a hero in order to defeat the Mountain King, which is all brought across via some of these small dialogue sections and dream sequences that happen throughout the game. However, as it turns out, and minor spoilers here, actually, your brother was something of a sacrifice that we should probably not have gone after. But here we are, we've completely ignored the advice of the elders. Look, these aren't trap walls, that's what I'm looking for. Oh, now it's lighting up, I've just seen that. So this shows us the way to go that doesn't set off the trap. Interesting. God, this game has so many good setups. It's actually astounding how much the developer has done, and all these little things that I did not notice at all to begin with. Touché. Oh, they don't mess around. Even at the end, you're still hopping around like no tomorrow. Oh, darn. Good on ya.
An old fireplace. Chilled by the cold stone walls, you quickly light it up.
Let's go on, let's set off this fireplace so we can enjoy a little bit of our cutscene, and our compass, having been used, has now disappeared. So I will be leaving it here, as I've said. I want to be jumping around between the different missions and not really giving too many spoilers. This is a puzzle game, so I don't want to show off how to complete so much of it. We're just going to be seeing some random bits from random levels, but I hope you've enjoyed so far and learn a little more as we go. Now, we're quite a bit of the ways in, hence we're now able to throw our sword. By hitting spacebar, we can throw our main item, dealing additional damage to enemies, meaning that potentially we could take out ogres should we find them, but it does come in handy in opening up the options to move enemies around or take them out from afar. But those extremely simple controls actually makes it fairly intuitive when you're trying to go about completing each of these puzzles. And just as now we can see, we have the culmination of platforms, traps, teleporters, gated enemies, as well as the fact that the enemy themselves are going to be setting off this trap it really does give just enough of a chance for you to actually take them out before moving on. Yeah, I'm kind of proud of that one. But it really does give a nice pace to things, especially for the fact that since we're restarting so quickly, I don't have to worry too much about how fast or how slow we've been going. But it's a beautiful little indie pixel game, something that is surprisingly difficult to say, that will keep you coming back for more. Each mission just quick enough that when you finish, you think, yeah, I've got time for another, let's give it a go. Relying on a series of different environmental and item-based puzzles in order to challenge you, with some of them genuinely doing that, forcing you to not only consider how the traps work, how the portals work, where you can move, where you can send items, but also the environments themselves, what is lit or unlit, what colors certain things are, and I'm really trying my best not to spoil things here, because those puzzles, frankly, are the better ones. They're the ones where you actually finish them and think, darn, I did good, I actually managed to figure something out by myself without having to rely upon any kind of guide or the hints themselves. Now, given not only the price of this game, but also the fact that it's so damn enticing, really giving that want of one more level, just one more, that's all I need, it is ever so slightly perplexing why the game is so cheap. What's really kept this interesting is all the puzzles being so varied, some of them requiring you to go on the attack, some of them requiring you to figure out what the heck's going on, or even use the environment against the enemy. Oh, that guy's quick. So although some of the time you'll be moving around trying to figure out where things go or how to get the enemy to move in just the right place, other times it's relying more on your skill of directional control and having to deal with some very, very fast critters. You can see here we're basically just controlling this horrible ghost, plumbing fast to try and drag them into the right place. That attack is so quick. Flipping heck. Right, I'm gonna actually have to concentrate on this one. Well, the game certainly gets harder as time goes by, but I don't see this as a bad thing at all. Now, what can be rather annoying, such as with this level, is figuring out the exact way in which things are supposed to be done, as there are very limited resources within each mission, with the enemies themselves actually being deemed a resource. Meaning, yes, we are having to plan enemy movements so as to complete this, darn it, we just took them out, and somehow make our way to the bottom. Or, without the enemies to do it, yeah, slightly scuppered. But each time you can just go back and hit refresh and get back right to the start, hopefully minding your way a little better. Though if you're like me, this is going to mean a lot of restarts. With some missions honestly kind of taking the mick with how hard they can be, and others, well, basically falling over without a hassle. Apparently I'm actually going to have to try a little bit for this one, so give me 10 secs. I'm pretty sure we don't want to do that, but we'll figure out soon. And that is perfection in a handbag, mate. So as I was saying, the game really does a lot working with very little, each new level introducing new mechanics, such as teleporters, platforms, traps, enemies, or even restrictions such as not being able to directly finish off any of your foes. A challenge that is slightly easier said than done, but once more that speed of reset really coming into play, giving you plenty of options for trying different things and simply having a go, moving things around and seeing what you can do to help you. With essentially each level or chapter coming down to a few minutes at most really to complete them, and the option to have those hints come in at 5 minutes is pretty much bang on, as if you are hitting 5 minutes, it definitely seems like a long time to be stuck in such a small map. But it's that smallness of the map itself that actually opens it up, seeing as there's not that much we can interact with, so trying to hit everything is a viable option if you genuinely can't think of anything else. With each chapter introducing new ideas, and those new ideas being built upon and integrated into prior mechanics, alongside a fair few chapters which simply require you to actually figure out and solve a puzzle, to use the maps available, to look at the environment and identify which candles are turned on or off, and actually think about what you're doing when completing them. And other chapters then requiring you to fall upon your skills, quickly moving your character around even though you're essentially stuck in tank controls. it's basically exactly what you want out of a puzzle game. Honestly, the amount of polish that has gone into the game, refining each level to keep things just clear enough for the player to know roughly what they're supposed to do, while providing enough hints to help those who maybe fall by the wayside, myself included, so as to ensure everyone who starts this story will be able to finish this. Now, one of the things that really jumped out to me as I was playing is by the very nature of the game itself, with each level you enter automatically saving and each of these chapters being a fairly quick, fairly easy to do dungeon, only taking a few minutes, and with those hints coming in at 5, basically it feels more and more like an iOS game, and actually having a look, it is an iOS game, so that makes a lot of sense. Now that said, I can see that the controls would be a little bit trickier when you're trying to do this on a phone, as pretty much anything that uses a touchscreen is always going to be trickier than using a dedicated keyboard. And considering the fact that Alt-Tab actually didn't close the screen, this could cause a few issues for people who enjoy to play their games perhaps somewhere they shouldn't. We all know who we are. Now, unfortunately, we do have to consider some of the slight issues with the fact that when characters are speaking or you're reading something, the game not pausing, it is indeed possible to lose the game by being hit by something when you're doing this, where I've definitely had to restart a few of the dungeons simply for the fact that things have managed to catch me while I'm unable to move, and wanting to see what's happening. It's a minor annoyance, but it's definitely enough of one that when it does happen, you get a bit ticked off. Thankfully though, the game does let you respawn incredibly quickly, so it's never too much of an issue, and given that each of the individual dungeons usually can be completed within a matter of seconds or at most a couple of minutes, you're not going to hold it against it too much, as you'll be back in the action before you know it. Not to mention that since the majority of dungeons and each levels are completed separately from the rest of them, you only ever really need to remember the solutions to one part, with, as they are now, the dungeons being connected. You can easily check for this by simply trying to go back from whence you came, where the game would normally tell you simply no, you cannot move on. This would take you further from your brother. The developer has nicely been able to point you in the right direction each and every time without actually having to give too much away, with of course the option there, if you need it, to use some of those hints to give you a hand. And unfortunately for this level, we do see some of the issues that come in. Having thrown a stone at the character, we're now unable to actually complete this as we only have the one stone. Thankfully, there's a little reset button. We can get right back on it, get 3 stones once more. If we go the other way, let's do it here. No, that just gets rid of the stone instantly. You took our stones, AF? How dare they? Right, this one's actually proving pretty darn difficult. What should we do? That's one way to get rid of them, which actually shows exactly why this game is so good, in that everything is fairly simple, but just tricky enough that you end up working pretty darn hard to get it. It's a lovely little indie title that came out of nowhere, is nice and cheap, and has still posed plenty of fun, and honestly has taken over my evenings. Catch a little Z's apparently is the way forward. What the heck did we just trigger? Oh, I'm so glad we finished on this. You can definitely tell the developer had a lot of fun making this and just... Well, I would say didn't even care about the game, but the game really does work. The puzzles are properly challenging. The quirkiness is definitely in. Oh, you absolute legend. We'll take it.
Was one thoroughly disturbing dream.
In any case, it was a fine performance indeed. Now, before we finish up, I'm just going to point out that yes, I'm interacting with literally everything, and the reason is that there aren't really that many hints. And this isn't really a bad thing though, because the maps are so small that going around and interacting with everything is definitely an option. As we've now found a stone, these little stones here. Oh, this has gone very, very meta. Excellent. Excellent, excellent tutorialization. I will give them that. Even though we've woken up literally on a wall. I will note just at the end, because the time has passed for our hint on this level, that we can go through and get the full combination if you are really struggling with this. The game doesn't want you to be left behind, it's not trying to keep people out of its completion, so there's no need to worry. For this very quick drop in, drop out puzzler, I have thoroughly enjoyed. Well, I shan't deprive you of any of the further joys of this game, going forth and setting out into these smaller maps, which really do promote you just going out and trying different things, as there's really not that much to try. You only have one control you can do, and interaction is simply done by moving into things, with spacebar being the only additional button you need on your keyboard, either placing or throwing the item. But it's a good, quirky little indie title, and something I am thoroughly enjoying playing, especially considering it was so cheap. So a big hats off to the developer. I hope you enjoyed today our look at Dungeons of Dreadrock as we prepare to see what's brought to bear next. As always, until next time, peace out. Oh my god, you can actually kill yourself. That is brilliant. Too fast for my own sword. Rock and roll. Oh, that's when you know a developer's having fun.